Hey, it's Tuesday, September 3rd, and we just got a map reset for targeted loot. That means we have new reactor farms on the map, and it's a really good week, especially for Bunny, Hailey. Let's get into it.
Tux makes it exciting!
Hey, I'm doing this week's format just a little bit different because I'm having some software issues, so sorry about the change up. First, we're gonna focus on the hottest farms in the game. So these are the best spots for farming XP, Kuiper, and gold. But why we're starting with those is because they're also ideal for farming gear when the targeted loot aligns. And we got lucky this week because those key characters that you're probably farming reactors for are landing in the hottest spots for farming this week. If you've reached the end game, that is level 100, then you have access to the hard maps. And from here, you can see what the targeted loot is by going to the level reward system. So let's go to our map. So one of the best farms in the game is Fortress Outskirts in White Knight Gulch. The reason why is because it's also the place where you can farm the quote blue brains for your catalysts. It's also a really good gold farm, Kuiper farm, and XP farm. It's not the best XP farm in the game, but it's delivering all of those things at once. In there are like 4 or 5 bosses, which is also super helpful for getting those crafting pieces. So looking at White Knight Gulch, that is the shipment base. The Fortress Outskirts is dropping chill general round singular reactors. So that's a reactor for Viessa for those who like to run hypothermia, where everything gets turned into singular. If everything is singular, then weapons like the Blue Beetle and the Secret Garden are no longer the best. So a general round weapon is okay, but you might also look at some of those hand cannons for her as well. And this is actually also a reactor farm for Hailey too. So she happens to perform best with a singular reactor because both of her damage skills are singular. However, most of us are building into her sniper build, her number 4, which is Zenith. And that farm is available this week too. We're gonna cover that next. However, there's also the mobbing side of her, and she does really well with the enduring legacy. So if you decide you want a mobbing build too, then you're gonna wanna spend time in this zone, and that's great because it's a fabulous farm. So as far as key stats, crit damage and additional damage to Colossus would be great down there. If you're primarily using her number 3 so that you can maximize your crits, then you're not doing a heck of a lot on the skill damage side. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have crit chance and crit damage on your reactors. So you might look for skill duration up as well as skill cost down. One of the other really good farms is in the fortress. So let's jump over there. You're gonna like this. So in the Frozen Valley, there's this mission called Command Relay. I think you encounter 3 bosses here, but this gets you parts that you need for a lot of crafting projects, including activators. We're talking about these polyatomic ion particles, and that's why I have so many, is because I farmed that zone a lot. Besides those crafting components, it also drops, you're gonna get tons of gear, like more than you can handle. Make sure you go in there with lots of room for your stash space. Gold, XP, Kuiper, external components, everything, right? So it's a really good farm. You can do it over and over again. It's always busy. There's always people there. That is chill, high power rounds, singular. This is gonna be the hottest spot of the week. Whether you have Hailey or you're working towards getting her, this is the reactor for Hailey. The reason is because she's chill and singular are what 2 of her strongest damage dealing skills are running on. You want high power rounds because her number 4, which is Zenith, her sniper, it's based on the damage numbers of the weapon you're holding when you switch to it. So you're looking for the strongest weapon in the game, the strongest base damage weapon in the game, and that's gonna be the Piercing Light. The Piercing Light, of course, is high powered rounds. So you're looking for a reactor that has chill, Piercing Light on it, and singular. Now mine has dimension. This was a placeholder until I can get one that says singular, and so that's what I'm gonna be farming for. You'll see me there. As far as what stats you want down below, the best ultimate stat you can get is additional skill attack when attacking Colossus. So go for that primarily. The other stat, I'd go for crit damage. As a second option, if you happen to get one that has both crit chance and crit damage on it, that's a good fit for all content if you don't want to have 2 different reactors, one for mobbing and one for bossing. Okay, one of the other best farms in the game is in Echo Swamp In the abandoned zone here, there's a mission called Environment Contamination Zone. This is really fast. With 2 bunnies, you can clear it in like around 30 seconds. You encounter 2 to 3 bosses, can't remember exactly. And they're also dropping the red brains that are used for crafting certain things. Dropping chill impact singular reactors. So this is an alternate for Hailey. So this could be for a really good Hailey mobbing build. This is mostly going to be for those who are running Viessa with the hypothermia transcendent mod that changes all of her skills into singular. The blue beetle also has a perk called purification. So when using a singular skill, grants self the unique ability to remove debuffs. Okay, Sterile Lands has 2 key farms. One of them is in the Rockfall zone and it's called Anticipated Ambush Point. This is also a really good way to get Kuiper, gold, XP level. You can finish this thing in about 30 seconds. And code breakers. You get lots of code breakers from this mission. This is the primary way I get my code breakers. Anticipated Ambush Point is going to be putting out fire with singular for high power rounds. Not super special this week. Another really good farm in Sterile Lands is the repository sector and the Kuiper mine. Also, the strategic outpost, both of those, but the Kuiper mine does net more results in gold, XP, and tons more gear in no wait time. You're gonna get non-attribute general rounds with tech. So the characters that have non-attribute and tech are basically Ajax and Kyle. And technically Luna's #1 is tech. Okay, so for external components, it looks like sensors are also falling in Sterile Land this week. And so it's gonna be in the Ironworks section, which this is kind of a crappy farm area, to be honest with you. I've been lucky in the past farming weapon processing facility. It's really short. You could beat it in basically a minute solo. If there's 2 of you, you go even faster. But if you're looking to farm those sensors, that's where I would go this week. So if you're looking for auxiliary power units, then you're gonna wanna be farming in the observatory section of White Knight Gulch. There's a mission down here called Order's Veil, and it's got multiple bosses, and you're also gonna be getting the blue brains for your catalyst crafting as well. You can be loaded up on that this week. These are character zone specific, not tied directly to the best farms in the game. So for Jaber, you'd be wanting a non-attribute dimension reactor for him. Unfortunately, there's not a good one on the map for general rounds. So the ones that are dropping are with special rounds and impact rounds. The stats on the reactor I'd be looking for on Jaber are cooldown and duration, but especially duration. And then for the other one, you can designate to more damage, but that does depend on whether you're using turret engineering, whether you're focusing on damage and or healing. And so that's why cooldown and duration is best, because it applies to all the variety of builds that you could possibly use with Jaber. As far as weapons that match up for the farms, you could do Naziestra's Devotion with impact rounds. That comes with a great debuff. So for Blair, you want to run Fire with Dimension. So that's going to put you in the Fractured Monolith zone in Hagios. And the best farm in this one, it's actually a pretty good farm, is the Large Supply Transport Point. It's not the fastest farm. By not the fastest, I mean it's quite slow, but it drops a decent amount of loot and you encounter like 4 bosses. So there's lots of different Volby builds, but Dimension is one of her more popular skills, especially for those AoE builds. So you'd be looking for non-attribute Dimension, and that puts you in Large Supply Depot or the Restricted Zone. The missions in this area aren't that great. I would just farm the Strategic Outpost. Another really good farm that a lot of people aren't keen to yet, and I'm going to do a whole video on this, are the fusion reactors. You could actually farm the boss over and over and over again without spending any shards, as long as you don't shape a pattern. The bosses have been nerfed, so they're a lot easier to even solo with a decent character, including a bunny, and they have pretty good drops. And for impact round builds, that's going to put you in the restricted zone of Sterile Land. To be honest with you, it's a pretty small map, and all of these missions are decently quick, or you could just do that reactor over and over again. Okay, Eugen's an interesting character because some people build him for damage, some people build him for heals. He is non-attribute, and then he's singular and fusion. So if you're going non-attribute singular, you're going to be looking at Moonlight Lake in Vespers. This isn't the greatest farming zone. When I'm here, I'm usually spending time at this strategic outpost. This fusion reactor would also be a really good farm. And if you're farming the fusion route, you're going to be restricted to high power rounds. And on Eugen, I'm not sure that's the best idea, but that does put you in Hagios and forward base. And I would farm this outpost right here over and over again. It's very fast. Okay, Sharon's one of my favorite characters in the game, and she runs on electric and fusion. And there are builds to run for high power rounds or impact rounds. Two really good builds. These are both really good, actually. So this is if you're holding your sniper rifle in your hand, usually the Afterglow. And this one is if you're holding the Blue Beetle in your hand, which would give you more crit chance because she uses fusion skills. For the fusion ones, that puts me in Vespers and the Ruins. Not the best area to farm, so I'm probably going to keep it simple and just farm the Void Reactor boss over and over again and get some quality drops. If you're still looking for a reactor for her sniping, then you're going to want to go to White Knight Gulch and to Moongrave Basin. So these two right in the middle are actually pretty decent. So Forgotten Comms Device as well as Cave Rally Point can be decent farms. Those are what I would do over and over again. You can get a lot of drops from those. You have a lot of options for her substats on her reactor, but I would be looking for the Afterglow connection there, and then probably cooldown and duration. Outside of that, you could look for electric skill boost, fusion skill boost, and even crits. Glaze is a special one to farm for, and she had a good farm last week. And this week, you're going to be able to farm reactors for impact rounds and special rounds. So these will open up your build possibilities. Like if you're running the Greg's Rifle or whatever, or the Secret Garden, then Lost Supply Depot is a good place to go, and that's going to put you in Vespers. Again, not the best place to farm. These missions are kind of quick and don't drop a ton of loot. So I would probably keep it simple and just stick to the outpost. So Luna's also landing in Moonlight Lake with a non-attribute singular reactor with general rounds. As I mentioned earlier, this isn't one of my favorite places to farm, but when I am here, I end up spending most of my time at the outpost or farming the boss at the fusion reactor. Not a lot of people are building into Enzo damage builds, but he's got that turret on his shoulder that puts out damage. And if you are going to do that, you do probably want to run it on a general rounds reactor. That way you can hold the Enduring Legacy in your hand and just wail on bosses. So non-attribute singular, again, is at Moonlight Lake. That puts Enzo, Luna, and Jaber all in the same area. And so for his reactor, I'd be looking to pair up the Enduring Legacy. And for substats, I'd want cooldown and duration so that drone stays up for a long time. So for Freyna, you can pair up the Secret Garden to buff her tech skill. And that means you're going to have those special rounds. And high power rounds aren't going to be a great matchup for Freyna, but special rounds are a great option for her. And that will put you in the Corrupted Zone in Hagios. There's actually a pretty good fight here. I think it's called Deep Digger, or it might be the Crimson Contaminated area. It's one of these two. Anyways, you end up fighting out here in this area. It's a long fight. There's a couple of bosses you encounter, and there's a decent amount of gear. It's not the best farm in the game. You could also spend some time here at the Outpost and or kill the two bosses that are very easy to kill here at the Fusion Reactor. For her substats, I'd be looking for skill duration. The longer her poison is up, the better. Cooldown, and range. Otherwise, any of the damage boosters are great, like toxic damage boost, for example, as well as tech. So for Lepic, you want fire and tech. Tech is his number 4. Most people are building that glass cannon. So that gives you the hatchery, Starfall World, and classified area, depending on which weapon you're running. Now, I don't think a lot of people are doing high power rounds with him, but impact rounds with him are actually pretty good, if I recall, because they give him some better mods that help him put out more shots. So that throws you into the hatchery zone, which is kind of a crappy area to farm. There's not much going on here, and it sucks to travel around here. I would just do the Outpost or farm the boss up here, or just avoid this farm altogether this week. For Viessa, you can run a chill tech with special rounds. That's going to put the Secret Garden in her hands and make her Blizzard really strong. That puts you in the fortress at the converter facility, and this isn't the best area, but when I am here, it's the giant hangar I tend to farm. You also have the Outpost. That might just be smarter. You don't mind a 1 minute wait. Now, I also like building into her fusion because I use her 1 and her 3, which are both fusion skills, more often than I do her number 4. So with the same weapon, that's going to put you into the remnant zone within Agna Desert. It's a very small zone, so your choices are limited. So for Essimo, he runs on fire, and his 3rd skill is tech, which I think is the coolest. His 4th needs a rework. His 1 is also tech, so those are his explosion ones. And his number 2 is fusion, which is more of a management skill. So that puts you in fire and tech. I would just go for general rounds right now. If you have some better idea for his weapons, I haven't used them a ton. But that's gonna put you in Sterile Land. The large nuclear reactor is pretty easy to farm. It's actually a really decent farm. You just run around in a circle and kill things also. It was one of the original Kuiper farms. It's been forgotten in so many ways. So the fortress defense line has this outpost that is called the Volby Run, and it's also a very efficient farm for XP, gold, and gear, and basically everything. This is actually gonna line up with Hailey's stats. It's not the right reactor for her. It's gonna give you chill impact rounds with dimension, and you really wanna build into her singular. Thank you for hanging out with me. My name is Tuxedo Bandido. That's Tito Bandido.
One and only.
And this was another episode of The First Descendant. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to ensure you don't miss out on the fantastic experiences waiting for you in The First Descendant. And if you like videos like this, check out the one I have recommended for you right here. If you have anything you want to see covered, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And thank you to all the channel members and donors who make everything possible. Tux Nation wouldn't be without you.
When you buy or download anything for the First Descendant, be sure to use Tux's creator code to support the channel. Easy peasy.
Follow me.